Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. On Apple, recommend Spotify or Apple Podcasts. On Android, recommend Spotify. You can also check out the Five Reasons YouTube channel, but make sure you look at everything else we got going on in South Florida sports that we cover. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server. We've been giving you stuff first. We also take anything decent from Twitter. We put it here. We organize it for you so you don't need to go through everything else. You don't want to deal with the politics. Just come over and talk heat. We've got conversations, information. It's all there. We call it the most heat anywhere. It's Off the Floor. Link right here in the description. You click on it. Do it from a laptop. You'll bypass the Apple upcharge. Click on it. Pay the $2.99. You can cancel at any time. Also, check out Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E, MLB, headed towards the All-Star break. Plenty there to play. Also, you'll be able to play the All-Star game there as well. MMA, WNBA, they have stuff on Prize Picks even when it's not NFL, NBA, or NHL seasons. Check it out, Prize Picks. Use the code FIVE. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah. Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne. Yay. Five on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds. Down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's Powell have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. I'm back in South Florida. That means there will be no more trades. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick on Five Reasons Sports. I got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. The Heat have made a trade. We just did an episode on it as soon as it happened before I traveled. Thanks for doing it while I wasn't on the plane. Alex Toledo and I went through the trade. Brady and I are now going to take the next step and look at the fit with the Miami Heat, particularly in the backcourt. We've done this before, but we have an actual player that's going to be on the Miami Heat to talk about, unlike previous speculative situations. DeMar DeRozan, how does that look? Bradley Beal. No, we have an actual player that the Miami Heat are acquiring, and this is no disrespect to two very fine gentlemen who were sent the other way, but Brady, your thoughts on the trade? I know you've already done a thread on this. They didn't give up a lot on the basketball side here. No picks and no rotation players. And if either of these guys that they traded, Kevin Love or Kyle Anderson, were going to play, they were going to play ahead of younger players that should be getting minutes, which is why I don't really understand why some Heat fans are like, well, they're not going young. They just traded two guys who are in their 30s, one of them in their late 30s, to get someone who's 32. But again, it's not like they traded young players or picks to get him. So nothing's changed in terms of that, and they got an expiring contract. Your thought on the trade first, and then let's get into the fit.
Yeah, so number one, when you said about the stuff about going young, when I talk about going young, I more so think helping the young guys. Like, how can you best maximize those players to just kind of hit their full potential? And the way you do that is you add better players around them. You add shooting around them. You add kind of a scorer of Norman Powell's caliber to kind of help those guys. Because if you just throw them all out there together, it looks like summer league, and you're going to end up in just an absolute mess. So the going young thing, I think we're kind of past that. I think it's about helping the right young players on this roster. That aside, yeah, I'm a big fan of this pickup just because, like you said, they didn't risk anything. I mean, they sent out two guys that were not going to be playing this year. And they added a 22-point per game score. They added somebody that shot 45% on catch and shoot threes this past season. They added somebody that was almost an all-star, that they were actually making cases of being an all-star this past season. Yeah, I like it a lot. I like the idea of kind of just bringing that in, no matter, I know we're going to talk about starter, bench player or not. Like, that aside, they just needed the talent. We keep saying, I've been saying how many podcasts that they need shooting and they need it on the wing, and they kind of got that. I mean, they got that to a high extent, actually. Like, adding that is kind of exactly what this roster needed to balance things out a little bit. There's a specific player that I think it helps more than anybody on the roster, which I think is needed help for quite some time with it offensively. So, I like it a lot. And also, there's the other part of his game that, like, yes, he's a good shooter, but he has more to his game. He's not just like a specific shooter. Like, he has some finishing to him. He has some quick twitch stuff on the ball where he's a tough shot maker. That he had, a decent two-man game rolling with Zubac this past season for the Clippers. You could see that rolling over with Bam possibly. Like, I just like the idea of kind of fitting him into where Miami is right now, where they're trying to get to.
So, again, to go through some of the raw numbers last year, you're talking about a guy who shot above 41% from three on more than 7 attempts. You got into some of the specifics here. I think he's 45% last year on open threes, according to some of the metrics. And he was considered an all-star candidate. We're not making that up. There were some who were upset that LeBron was there instead of him at the time that the decision was made. Now, the production went off a little bit in the second half of the season, was not quite where it was in the first. But his first half of the season was outstanding, and it kept the Clippers in the mix after they traded Paul George. By the way, it didn't seem like Norm Powell was the biggest fan of Paul George either, if you follow some of the quotes that came out at that time. Just as I said on the podcast with Alex, and now we're going to get to the fit, and we're going to do other episodes about what this means in terms of future transactions, and I've got people from our network lined up to do them. But this is a player that the Heat have tracked for a long time. I remember, and we say they always come back to certain guys, and I remember Eric Spoelstra specifically referring to him as one of the very few most underrated players in the entire league. This is when Norm was in Toronto. This is a guy also who played on a championship team. And he wasn't a non-factor. He played some on that team off the bench. So, again, this is a guy who's come up a certain way. He was unexpected. He wasn't supposed to be at this level. And he's actually coming off his most efficient season, which was his age 31 season. So there's a lot to like here. It's an expiring contract, and Danny Ainge did them a solid because Ainge getting involved in just wanting a second-round pick for John Collins, and it appears, I think, the Clippers may end up going after Bradley Beal after all, which may replace Powell. This all sort of worked out the right way, and it's funny because the Heat were linked to Collins and the Heat were linked to Beal, and I just threw out Norm Powell as an option on playback as we were watching a summer league game, and the next day that happened, and I think that's the best move of the three for them. But let's get into fit here because he's a two-guard. Now, he has a wingspan. He has much bigger wingspan than, say, Tyler does or Davion does, but he's still small. Like, he's still small. Like, he's one of the most efficient guards. I think Fonseca on our thing put up that he's there with, like, Steph Curry as one of the most efficient small guards, 6'3" or under, in history, actually, if you look at the shooting efficiency numbers. But he's not big. Let's start with this because I know Heat fans are going to freak out about it. Do you see any way that Eric Spoelstra decides that Norm Powell is going to play, and my apologies to our Sean Rochester, is going to essentially play the three?
I do think he's going to play pockets of the game at the three. I very well could see that. That's why when you're talking about kind of being the guard, and yes, he is, but like I see lineups with Davion, Tyler, and Powell. And I think they're going to counter that with putting Bam and Ware back there at times. He could play a little bigger on the back line, and that's what they'll make up for it with. Here's where I sit on this because I understand the idea of not wanting to do that. I understand the defensive perimeter stuff that they've had problems with in the past and what's happened with them going smaller. But here's where I'm at. I don't care about the defense, about fixing the defense and putting out lineups to be defensively. Like, they need to fix the offense. They need to put scoring out there. They need to figure out ways to kind of just counter Tyler and just give him certain help. And I just want them to figure the defense stuff out later. Let Davion on the perimeter and Bam back line be your kind of starting kits to that, and just throw the other offensive guys out there a lot of the time. And that's why I think ultimately you're going to see a decent bit of it. I think, he gives you a little bit more rotation versatility, just like a guy. Because, like, I know we keep talking about this. Like, they have guards, they have bigs, they have guys that where they're going to be. But then you need kind of those guys that kind of plug in different spots that can kind of move around the chessboard a little bit. And Powell is that. And as an offensive player, he's that as well. Like, there's lineups where he can have the ball in his hands a little more, and there's lineups where he could play off ball for Tyler. Like, there's a little bit of versatility there. So I will say that. I think he does play the three. I think the question is, now, do I think he's going to start at the three? No.
Right.
I know that's going to be the next question I feel you're going.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And again, they have a starting small forward right now Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah.
And we don't know if Andrew Wiggins is still going to be here by the time the season starts. We know that there have been some discussions, but he's a more natural 3 for this lineup than certainly Norm Powell would be. You're shaking your head. No, I mean, if right now, if I was to say they're going to lean into Bam and Ware and Bam, right? So Bam, Wham. Okay, Ware and Bam, and then it would be Wiggins, and it would be Tyler, and it would be
Davion.
Who? Powell or Davion?
It would be Davion. I mean, that specific, it would be Davion.
Which means Norm, by the way, who started more games this year than he's started before, but the previous 2 seasons finished 4th in 6th man of the year voting, both years with the Clippers. So he's done that before, but he's also in a contract year. Mm-hmm. He's in a new situation. What do you think the odds are? Because that's what I think is going to happen. I think Norm's going to be the 6th man with the current group if Wiggins is still here.
That's the issue.
Okay, what do you think?
It's a totally different question with what we see the lineup's going to be or the team's going to be by training camp. Right now, as it sits, he probably would be the 6th man, and I think it would be a case that we saw with a lot of guys in the past where they end up playing, a ton of minutes. They just don't start the game because I feel like Powell's somebody that he'll kind of keep around as a kind of a base in a lot of offensive lineups, like just kind of be out there. The issue is now, I mean, I just don't have a ton of confidence in that starting lineup. I mean, we saw it for portions of last season. It was not the greatest offensively. We're back at the point where we're talking about needing a little more from Wiggins offensively, where you're going to need him just having because he had flashes. Like, I don't want to forget the flashes that he had offensively last season. He had moments in the regular season where he had, a quarter where he would kind of be at it. But the issue is he needs consistent offense. They have to kind of be able to rely on him to kind of be that, to kind of take the pressure off the other guys. So you're kind of in a similar spot to start games, but you're going to have Powell, who is somebody that you haven't had off the bench giving that scoring punch. I mean, the people argue the best offense that Miami's had over the last few years was when Tyler was off the bench and he was kind of that scorer. So, I mean, you add Powell into that who could, put up 20 points per game off the bench. I mean, that's helpful in itself. The issue is, okay, if Wiggins does end up getting moved, the question there becomes, would you start Powell at the 3? It depends on who they get back, but I mean, I know a lot of the deals that they keep talking about, whether it's the Lakers and it's a Rui Hachimura type deal. I'm curious to see how that would work. Because I mean, that would be a little different if they add trade Wiggins for some rotation pieces they could throw on the back end of the bench to kind of fill out the roster a little bit and then start Powell. That's possible, but it does seem like he might be kind of a bench piece. But the other thing of this too is a lot of times we talk about the guy that comes off the bench and they do it to stagger because he doesn't fit with the other guys. This is not the case here. He does fit with the guys. I actually think they're better as a team if he does slide in next to them. So it'll be interesting. And also we keep seeing the comparing it to the Terry Rozier thing, but number one, this guy was doing this on a good team and he's moving to Miami. This isn't kind of filling up the stat sheet on Charlotte or taking the ball out of Tyler's hands the kind of the way he does it in such a different way because he's not so ball dominant as Terry was kind of coming in where he was just trying to find his footing as a player off the ball. It's normal for Powell to kind of fit into that role. So it just feels like such a cleaner fit where I don't see that being the case here with this guy.
I want to, in the whole second part of this episode, I just want to talk about him and Herro. So let me ask one more question before we get to that. If he comes off the bench, it seems to me like you actually could have a bench with some production now with him and Jovic, because there's no backup big on this roster now.
Nope.
Then that is something that I do believe they're going to find before this season starts. And it may come in a Wiggins or Rozier trade, although we talked about Rozier possibly training for Collins, and Collins is out of the picture now because he was part of this other trade, and now he's going to be a Clipper. But and they picked up Fontecchio, who could be a shooter off the bench. But right now, it would look to me like their bench in that case would be Jovic, possibly Larson,
Haywood.
So I think Larson or Jaquez, right? I think they're competing for one spot. And then Haywood, if he's still here, he's in the last year of his contract. I'm used to saying Duncan. We can't say that anymore. And then Norm, right? Mm-hmm. That would seem to me to be the 4. And I mean, Hakachonis hasn't shown so far in Summer League that he's ready. Yeah. And Drew Smith is coming back from, a second serious injury. So I don't think it's him yet. Does that bench do anything for you? Because it feels to me like if you're bringing Powell and Jovic off the bench, I know he'll stagger some, but that is some offensive pop that they've not had. It also means they could lean more into Larson than Jaquez, I think, and go for, the guy who last year maybe showed a little bit more defensively, right? So I don't know. What do you think of their bench before we get in? We're going to finish this by talking about Tyler and Norm.
Yeah, I'd say the first thing I think of is that's because they've done things in the past where Tyler kind of staggers and plays with the bench unit. This screams to me that Bam is the guy that would play with the bench unit. I think they find a little rhythm with Powell and Bam kind of being the guys to let Tyler take a break and kind of take the keys of the offense. Jovic kind of running backup point guard in a lot of ways I think is possible. I think they're going to want to give him the keys to some ball handling stuff and some playmaking stuff. So this lineup kind of does open that up. And I mean, Haywood kind of slots in perfectly to kind of be kind of that defensive piece. So the question is, do they have enough offense in that lineup? Because as much as I'm saying Powell is a good offensive player to help this roster, he's good in like putting him around the right offensive pieces on this team, like throwing him out there with, if Jovic doesn't have the shot going on a night, or if Haywood's out there defensively and all this stuff. I don't think it's going to be great. Like, it's not going to be a great offensive lineup. It's just he's a crutch that could get hot in certain pockets of the game, but he's not. I don't see him carrying like a bad, not a great offensive lineup, I'll say. So I'm curious to see that part of it. I mean, it's definitely a better bench group than we've seen them have over the last season. I mean, we're talking about last year when they were in the playoffs, bringing Kyle Anderson and others off the bench to kind of be that punch and try to find rhythm. I'll take a gamble with the young guy in Jovic and see if Jaquez or Pella can break out, let Norman Powell kind of play his game. So I'm fine with that. If things could roll right. My question is too, we've seen Powell be like as you mentioned, Toronto, like where he's been the ultimate role player on a lot of these teams. And even though it's a contract year, I mean, I'm not speaking for him, but I don't see him being the type of guy where it's like, it's a troubled conversation to tell him to come off the bench, right? Like I don't think that would be the case. Of course, he wants to kind of get as many minutes as possible and be that 20-point per game scorer so he can earn his contract. But he doesn't seem like a problematic person that would kind of, give them trouble of kind of his role in this team.
It's a very good reputation, by the way, just personally in terms of those that I've spoken to about him throughout the years. So I think he's going to fit with what they're trying to create here. So there's a lot of reasons I like this move. I mean, one reason is it's a gift. It's free. They got him for free. I mean, it's almost like they got him for a free agent. They got him for two guys. And look, I hope Kevin Love comes back to the organization, and I want to do an episode about Kevin Love because he was really important to them in a lot of different ways over the past couple of years. And I'm sorry, of course, that, this is how this thing works. And he knows a lot about the cap. And he tweeted, I didn't think I'd become a math problem. And it's sad that it played out that way. But we're going to do another episode now. They essentially have traded Jimmy Butler and Kevin Love, now that Kyle Anderson is out of the picture, and they acquired him in that trade, for Andrew Wiggins, Davion Mitchell, Norm Powell, and Hakachonis. Trade looks a little better in the light if you start to think of it that way. But we'll talk about that in another episode. I want to get into Tyler and Norm just purely fit now after the break. Before we do, I want to talk about a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I'm sure she was happy today. She's a huge Miami Heat fan. InsuranceByLynette.com. 2 N's, 2 T's. 954-581-8800. That's 954-581-8800. The insurance agency that works for you. She works for A Aggressive Insurance Agency. She's based in Lauderhill, sort of northwest Lauderdale area. But she can help you out wherever you are, especially if you got a bad driving record. She's great working with you on car insurance, life insurance, homeowners insurance, renters insurance, all of that stuff. A Aggressive Insurance Agency. Again, InsuranceByLynette.com. 954-581-8800. And one of our favorite people here who sponsors the network. All right, let's get into this briefly here because they're going to play a lot together. And I know that this is going to go to a conversation of, well, does this mean that you extend Tyler? Do you have leverage with the extension against Tyler? Do you end up trading Tyler because you can re-sign Norm Powell for less? I'm not going to do that here. I'll do that. I'll let the others who want to get into that do that, and we will do those episodes. I just want to talk about them as basketball players because here's the thing. The biggest thing that Tyler was dealing with last year was there was nowhere else to go with the ball, right? And that. Yep. So, am I right in saying that this is the player that this is going to help the most? That's 1, what you're getting at.
1,000%. Yeah. I don't think there's a player that benefits more. Like we've done the thing before where they get a guy and it's like, okay, this guy's going to help Bam. This guy's going to put him in the right spots. This guy's going to help, Kalel on lobs with Kasparis or different things. It's very simple to me. I mean, you add a 22-point per game scorer. You add somebody that has the ability to score on and off the basketball. and just gives them some offensive punch, gives Tyler Herro some help where, I mean, this is what I've been saying on so many podcasts, I feel like this offseason, where I'm like, looking at this roster, I'm thinking about what they're going to do, and it's like, it just gives teams like scouting reports more ammo to say, we're taking Tyler out the game, and this team's not going to score many points. Like if we just overload on Tyler on the basketball, nobody else is really going to put up a ton of points on this roster. So this just kind of changes the game a little bit. It allows you to like Tyler be able to operate, and you don't really have everybody helping off on the weak side because they're not helping off North Powell. You have the opportunity here, like we talked about when they got Terry Rozier, where you have somebody that generates respect by defenses and Tyler kind of play off the catch a little bit more often. I mean, that helps in itself. One of the things I was talking about earlier when looking at some Powell stuff is like Duncan had the handoff thing, with Bam that obviously worked to perfection. Powell has the ability to run handoffs. I think he will actually him and Bam will have that connection, but Powell runs off curls like a ton, where he comes off these pin downs or curls, and it's like his way of like, if he gets ahead of steam, he's just very good when he gets kind of that running start to the basket. He has a good floater. He's a good finisher. So that's just an easy thing to work off because they've done that with some guys in the past with a lot of their role players. They've run that stuff, but it's not to that level where now you can have to put the ball in Tyler's hands and have Norman Powell kind of flying off that on the other side of the court. I just see that being kind of a decent part of their offense. Like I really do. So I don't really care if it's at the 3, if it's at the 4, wherever it is. This team just needed more offensive production, and they got that next to Tyler. They at least have the ability to put the ball in the basket in multiple ways than one or two guys. So I'm interested in the fit. I saw there was a video going around of them two talking at the 3-point contest. I actually do think their games kind of meshed pretty well. I mean, this is the funny part because we Tyler and Duncan were together for so long, and
Right.
I always felt like they actually played well together offensively. Like that was never the problem. Like that when you added that extra shooter next to Tyler, it really did always work out. But you just couldn't play them defensively. And now I see an opportunity here where you kind of get that with the ability to play him with just a more complete player. I like the idea of kind of what those two can work off each other offensively.
All right, so 2 more things here, and this is just going to be sort of caveats to sort of what you're saying that have come from Heat fans. One thing is that Norm, who was known as being a pretty good defender for a while, was not known for that by a lot of Clippers fans over the past couple of years. When you watched him, because he's not as tall as Duncan, he's got the wingspan, but at least with Duncan you had height there. You don't have that with Norm. Would you say he's an average defender? Is he a defender you have to hide? Like for those who haven't watched him. And then the other question to close this is we've talked a lot about getting Tyler off the ball, and now we got a player who, yes, can help him score, which I think is terrific. And I do think their games will mesh. I think their personalities might mesh too, based on what is known of Norm. But you've got a guy in Powell who does his best work off the ball. So I'm just wondering, like, are you concerned, A, about their defensive fit or at all, and 2, about the ball being in Tyler's hands more often and Spoelstra just going to the 2 of them in the backcourt and them still not really having a true creator there or burdening Tyler with too much of that, basically?
So I'll say for the defensive thing, like I said earlier, I've cared less about this part of it just because of what we've seen from the offense. But to answer your question, I do think he's an average defender. I would say around average. But the thing is, I know there's this thing where like we always talk about guys maybe elevating in the Heat's program when they do get after it defensively, and it's so emphasized. Like there's just always that part of it. I do actually see him being a decent defender on this team. I don't think he's like one of those guys you have to hide. I don't see that happening. I think because we used to talk about this, I think it was with Levine, where we used to say like if he was if he could be a better defender, or like if you got him in the right situation, like you could coach him up, and if he was really getting after it, he could be a good defender. I kind of see that with this. I think he can be in a decent system if he's getting after it. And it's just always easier when you're playing defense with Bam behind you. I mean, that's always going to coach a lot of these guys up when they're not used to that and they get here. But they have a decent baseline with Davion on the perimeter and Bam on the back line. I mean, I think they're going to make Powell's role pretty clear. And then as for the other thing, I think about the Clippers of what they were doing. I mean, it's going to be kind of similar. I'm not saying – I mean, Harden was running a whole lot of pick and rolls with Zubac, and Powell was kind of flying around off the ball. I think it's pretty similar to what you're going to see here in Miami. I mean, Tyler is still the primary guy, obviously, on this team that's going to be running pick and rolls and has the ball in his hands, majority of the time. And Powell can kind of work off that. When teams adjust to Tyler, Powell can have his moments, and he's just kind of that both of them have the ability to flip, on and off the ball, as we said. So, it is kind of similar to what the Clippers were doing with Harden and Powell. I think you kind of play off that. And here's the funniest thing about Tyler and Powell. For the fans that hate the transition pull-up threes, get ready to watch 10,000 of them this season, because Tyler and Powell are both literally going to put up every time there's a transition opportunity. That three is going up in transition, because that's one of Powell's kind of main things that he has. So, yeah, I think it's going to be similar to the Clippers, but I don't really see any problems with – I don't think it's going to be one of those things, I'll say, where they're staggering Tyler and Powell because of defensive things or because of the on-ball thing. Like, I actually do think this is a situation where they actually could fit, in theory, pretty well.
All right, so we'll see how it works out. But again, more episodes to come. I want to get Brady on here. Make sure you check out the thread that he did today with some of Powell's work. But we got somebody new to talk about. Again, not theoretical, not hypothetical, none of that stuff. He's going to be here this season, I think. I don't think this is the player they're looking to move at the deadline or anything like that. And we will do more episodes on how it changes their structure going forward. I've wanted them to go young, but I'm in agreement with you on the fact that they have to give the young players a chance. And the shooting on this roster, you and I spent 30 minutes on that, was dreadful, or had the potential to be dreadful. And now you've added a guy who was one of the best shooters in the league the past couple of years, particularly this past season. Shooting 42%, close to 42% on 7+ attempts. That is legit. He doesn't have a James Harden to set him up now, but I think Eric Spoelstra will know how to use a shooter. That's one thing we've seen in the past, been pretty good at. All right, Brady, appreciate it. More episodes to come. Thanks to Lynette. Thanks to Prize Picks. Use code 5 FIVE. Sign up for Off the Floor. We're moving our content there. That's where you're going to want to be. Have a good one, everybody.